Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math.
I'm Sean Gannon, and this is Minute Math. And today we're learning about multiplying integers. We're going to find each product. 6 times negative 4. Well, when we have 6 times a negative 4, I ignore the negatives first. I think 6 times 4. Well, 6 times 4 is 24. Okay? So we have 24 right there. But then we have a negative. So we have a positive times a negative. It's a negative. So our final answer is just negative 24. 4 times 2. So 4 times 2. Well, 4 times 2 is just 8. Now we know we have a positive times a positive, which will always be a positive. So our final answer is just positive 8. Pretty easy. 3 times a negative 4. Well, we know that 3 times a positive 4 is just 12. Now we have a positive times a negative will always be a negative, so we combine those two facts to get our final answer of a negative 12. Negative 6 times 4. Well, we know positive 6 times 4 is 24. Okay? But then we have that negative there. A negative times a positive is a negative. So we have a negative right here. And so our final answer, combining the two facts, is a negative 24. 5 times a negative 4. So we have 5 times a negative 4. Well, what's 5 times a positive 4? 5 times 4 is 20. Okay? But now we have that negative. Can't forget it. A positive times a negative is always a negative. So our final answer, negative 20. Negative 3 times 4. So we have negative 3 times 4. Well, 3 times 4 is a 12. And a negative times a positive is a negative. Combining the two, final answer, negative 12. Negative 5 times 6. Okay? Okay, negative 5 times 6. All right? Well, we know that if we ignore the negative, a 5 times 6 is a 30. Okay? So we have 30 there, but we know it's a negative 5. And we know a negative times a positive is always a negative. So our final answer here is just negative 30. Negative 2 times a negative 1. Well, we know that a 2 times a 1 is just 2. So I ignore the negatives. 2 times 1 is 2. But then I also know a negative times a negative is a positive. So combining those two facts, our final answer is just positive 2. Negative 8 times a negative 2. We have negative 8 times a negative 2. Well, we know that 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, so ignore the negatives first. Then we know we have a negative times a negative. Negative times a negative is always a positive. Okay, so combine the two facts. Final answer, it's a positive 16. 11 times a 12. Okay, well, what we can do here is take, 12 times 11 and do it the standard way. 1, if you don't have it memorized, all right? 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. Place value here for 0. Now we're going to deal with this one. 1 times this 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. We add these two together. 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 plus nothing is 1. So our final answer here is just 132. Negative 7 times 5. All right? Well, we know, ignore the negative, 7 times 5 is 35. But a negative times a positive is always a negative. So combining the two, final answer, a negative 35. 9 times a negative 6. Okay? Well, we know that 9 times a positive 6 is a 54. And we also know a positive times a negative is a negative. So we combine the two facts, and our final answer is a negative 54. 10 times 5. All right? Well, we know 10 times 5, if you think off the top of your head, if you know it, it's just a 50. And a positive times a positive is always a positive. So final answer here is just positive 50. 9 times 2. Okay? Well, we know 9 times 2 is 18. Okay? And a positive times a positive is a positive. So together, final answer, pretty simple, positive 18. Negative 12 times 7. Okay? So if you don't have this one just memorized, we're just going to deal with the positive parts here. 12 times 7. Okay? Well, 7 times 2 is 14. Put the 1 up there. 7 times 1 is 7, plus that 1 is an 8. So 12 times 7 is an 84. But we're also given a negative times a positive, which we always know is a negative. So together, our final answer is just negative 84. 8 times a negative 12. Okay? Well, the first thing is I ignore the negatives and I think 8 times 12. Well, if we look at it the traditional way and put 8 below a 12, multiply it there, and it's kind of sideways 8, but it's still 8 nonetheless. Okay? 8 times 12. Okay? Well, 8 times 2 is 16. 6, carry the 1. And 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So we have a 96 here. And we know a positive times a negative is a negative. So combining those two facts, our final answer is a negative 96. Okay? So another way I like to do this problem here, just another way of thinking about it, 8 times 12. Well, 12 is 10 plus 2. Okay? And if I multiply 8 times each one of these, 8, so we have like here, 8's on the outside, 8 times 10 distributed in, plus 8 times 2. Let's put the 8 out here, right? Parentheses there. Distributing that in, well, 8 times 10 is 80, and 8 times 2 is 16. Adding them together, we have a 96. Okay? So that's how we also can get there. Now, again, we know it's negative, so it's a negative 96. 9 times 10 times 6. Okay? Well, all multiplication, let's just read left to right here. 9 times 10 is easy. That's 90. All right, but we bring down to 6. Now, 90 times 6 is a little more difficult. If we put 90 up here and multiply it by 6, okay, 6 times 0 is 0, and 6 times 9 is 54. Okay, so, 90 times 6 is 540, and so there is our final answer. Negative 6 times a negative 10 times a negative 8. Okay? Well, first thing I look at is 6 times 10. Well, we know that's 60, right? 6 times 10 is just 60. But we also think about the negative times a negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. Okay? Positive 60. Let's bring down the negative 8. Now we have 60 times a negative 8. Well, what I like to do, I ignore the negative and I just create a problem like this. 60 times 8. Okay? Well, 8 times 0 is just 8. 0. Excuse me. No. Anything times 0 is 0. Oh. Okay? And now 8 times 6 is 48. So together we have 480 is 60 times 8. So we have 480 here. Okay? But now we think about the positive times a negative. We always know that's a negative. So combine the two facts. Final answer is a negative 480. 7 times 9 times 7. Okay? Well, 7 times 9 we know to be 63. And then we're just going to bring down this 7. Now, 63 times 7, I don't have off the top of my head. Okay? So I set it up like this. 63 times 7. Well, 7 times 3 is 21. So we have 1 here, put a 2. And 7 times 6 is 42. Plus 2 more is 44. So we have 4 4, 1. Bring that down here, 4, 4, 1. Now we see that we got a positive times a positive times a positive, which will always be positive. So 441 is just our final answer. 6 times 6 times negative 2. All right? Well, we know 6 times 6 is just 36. And let's bring down that negative 2. Okay? Now 36 times 2, you might not know off the top of your head. So let's do that over here. 36 times 2. Now I'm not going to worry about the negative yet. I'll deal with that later. 2 times 6 is 12. 2, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. 72. So we put a 72 here. And now that's 36 times 2. But we have a positive times a negative. Positive times a negative is always a negative. So we have a negative 72. So our final answer, negative 72. Negative 5 times 4, negative 4 times a negative 10. Well, let's first deal with negative 5 times negative 4. 5 times positive 4 is 20. And a negative times a negative is always a positive. Okay? Positive 20 there. Bring down the negative 10. So 20 times a positive 10 is 200. Okay? So we have 200 there. And a positive times a negative is always a negative. Now if you want to see it in the standard way, 20 times 10, like this. 0 times 0, 0. 0 times this 2 is 0. Place value here for the ones now. Our tens position. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. Add them down. 0 and 0. 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 2 plus nothing is 2. 200. Okay? Just so you can see it that way. So again, like I showed here, final answer is negative 200. 9 times 9 times a negative 5. Alright? Well, first off, 9 times 9 is 81. That's easy. Bring down the negative 5. Now we have 81 times a negative 5. Well, I'm going to ignore the negative part here. 81 times 5. Alright? Well, 5 times 1 is a 5. 5 times 8 is a 40. So 405 is 81 times 5. But wait, we're not done. Positive times a negative will always be a negative. Toss a negative there. So again, final answer now, negative 405. 8 times 3 times 8. Well, 8 times 3 is 24. Pretty easy. Bring down this 8. But now we have 24 times 8. Let's go to the traditional method here. 8 times 24. Well, 8 times 4 is 32. 2, carry the 3. Now we have 8 times 2, which is 16, plus 3 is 19. So we have 192. 192 here. And since we had a positive times a positive times a positive is always going to be a positive. All the positives together being multiplied is going to be positive. Final answer, positive 192. 7 times 5 times a negative 5. Okay? Well, 7 times 5 is just 35. 35. Bring down the negative 5. Now, 35 times negative 5, I don't know off the top of my head. So I'm going to ignore the negative right here, and I'm just going to have 35 times a positive 5. Okay? But we won't forget about the negative. We'll deal with it later. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 here, carry the 2. 5 times 3 is 15. We add that 2, and that's 17. 175. But wait, there's more. Positive times a negative is always a negative. You thought I was going to forget about that negative now, didn't you? Negative 175 is now our final answer.
Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. MinuteMathTutor.com.